So today we're going to talk about responding to toddler behaviors. I hope some of you or all of you were here last month when we really talked about diving into understanding behaviors. So last month we really talked about understanding behavior and the why behind toddler behavior. Today we will review some of that in case you missed that, because I think it's important as we're responding that we understand the why. And then today we're going to look at responding to behaviors. So when our toddler is melting down and having a tantrum, how do I respond to that? And am I setting appropriate expectations for that behavior? When they're biting me, am I responding appropriately? So forth and so on. So to introduce myself, in case you don't know me, I am Lauren George. I am the Family Support Specialist with Child Care Answers. So in my role, I provide one-on-one parenting consultations for children, kind of infants, toddlers through preschool age, and then some younger school age kiddos, and then children with special needs. All of that is free to you. I also provide parenting workshops, and then I help families in Central Indiana locate quality childcare. So that's a little bit about me. And then I already kind of shared this a little bit, but I have a 7-year-old boy and a 3-year-old daughter. So those are my kiddos. And then I have experience as a toddler teacher. So I taught 2-year-olds for a couple of years. So I have parenting experience when it comes to behaviors, but also classroom experience when you're managing behaviors of an entire group. Sometimes which is easier than your one child. So if you're not familiar or following Child Care Answers on social media, we are active on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And that is a great way of getting active out there about parenting, hearing parenting resources and information, connecting with other parents, as well as hearing about our webinars and parenting events. So follow us on social media. We also post all of our recordings onto YouTube. So that is a great tool to get out there and watch some of those recordings that we have already offered. That one before this being understanding behaviors. And then on our website, we also have a great resource. It's childcareanswers.com/yourchild, or you can just find it going straight to childcareanswers.com and doing a little searching on our website. But that is our landing page of all of our parenting resources. So tip sheets, videos, links to webinars, and our resource guides. Those are great tools for parents, but also for childcare providers, or to share between parents and childcare providers, creating that consistency of messaging between home and school. Child Care Answers is also part of a larger resource and referral network in Indiana. So we are located in Central Indy, servicing Marion, Hendricks, and Hamilton County, but there is a resource and referral agency throughout the entire state. So while I am available for parenting support, I really limit my referrals for childcare to those 3 counties, but filling out our family information form or contacting me, I can put you in touch with the person who can run the most appropriate referral for you. So you can always start with me, and then I can send you to the right person. So looking at today's agenda as we're looking at responding to toddler behavior, first we're going to start with looking at guidance versus punishment and the difference between the two, kind of doing a review of understanding toddler behaviors, why they might respond a certain way, and then flipping our viewpoint to our own responses and how we're responding to their behaviors, to their emotions, to their feelings that they're having. And then breaking down some common toddler behaviors like screaming, saying no, hitting, all of that fun stuff. And then hopefully leaving time for some questions at the end. So as we think about positive guidance versus punishment, there is a difference between the two. And oftentimes the way that we respond to behaviors is very much a response to the way that we were parented, whether our parents guided our behaviors or punished our behaviors. So we're going to look at the difference between the two. And part of parenting is really making this conscious decision to do one or the other. And in the heat of the moment, when you're angry and you're frustrated, it's very easy to snap into punishment because positive guidance takes a lot more energy, but it is linked to the best outcomes when it comes to managing behaviors and emotions in young children. So guidance or positive discipline is not kind of letting children go free. It's not Lord of the Flies where the adult never sets limits. It is really setting firm and consistent limits, but teaching the child what behavior is acceptable instead of punishing unacceptable behavior. So positive guidance truly encourages good behavior by really focusing on feelings and problem solving. So the focus isn't on the actual behavior like the tantrum, it's really on the feelings that led to the tantrum, along with problem solving of you're very angry or you're very frustrated. How do we move from this feeling of frustration into kind of meeting our needs? You want a cookie. I get that you want a cookie. I said no, you're not having a cookie. So how do we problem solve our way out of this problem and into kind of a more solutions focused approach? It really fosters this bond between a parent and a child, creating trust and a connection. And when trust is established between a caregiver and a child, behaviors are more likely to be positive, and children experience better lifelong outcomes. So when we're looking at positive discipline, it's really focused on praising and rewarding positive behaviors. So it's kind of front loading positive behaviors by setting limits and then also telling them all of the good things they're doing. When we're constantly being punished or disciplined in a way that focuses only on our negative behaviors, it's kind of then the script that's been written for us. I'm negative, I'm bad, I'm going to continue to be bad, and I'm going to show you just how bad I can be. But when the script has been written in the positive, so the focus has been on praising behaviors that are good, we're warning those behaviors, whether it's with praise or with a little trinket or an M&M. It really creates the script that I'm a good person, I can do good things, and I want to be good. So we want to set that script for our child, that they can be capable and that they are a good little human. And then positive discipline is also about setting consistent limits. So if it's not okay to throw my phone today, then it can't be okay tomorrow. So of setting kind of those firm limits to say these are the non-negotiables, and it's always going to remain like that. And those rules have to stay consistent between settings in order for children to really understand what I am capable of doing and where my limits are. Young children thrive on limits. They push until they can get a limit because they need it. They need to feel safe within a set of limits. And so when there's an inconsistency or there aren't any limits, children are consistently kind of pushing to try to figure out where that fence is. It's kind of like a dog roaming the yard. If there's no fence, they're going to keep going a little farther and farther until they're roaming the neighborhood. But when we set up that physical barrier, it says this is where you have to stop. It's the same then with the child and behavior. When we don't set that limit, they continue to push. They continue to push to figure out where that limit is. But when we kind of stop our behavior, then they kind of know kind of what to expect. As we kind of focus back on positive discipline, it's really kind of moving from this negative to a positive thinking and mentality and approach as we look at behaviors. And it also ultimately teaches children to make good choices. So they learn how to control their behavior, and then they know what the outcome of their choices are. They know that if I do X, Y is going to happen because they've really learned logical consequences, right? So it teaches them how to have good behavior when no one's watching because they understand how it feels when something happens that they didn't really want to happen. Punishment, on the other hand, really focuses on the child being bad rather than the behavior itself. So it focuses on your behavior is bad, you are bad, your feelings are bad. rather than you're struggling emotionally and let's solve this problem together. So it can create feelings of inadequacy or the child feels worthless. It also creates this kind of mentality with this parent and this child that there's kind of this pushback. They're fighting each other. And I'm only going to behave when you're watching me, and when you're not watching me, I'm going to do whatever I want. And so I learned to lie. I learned to manipulate in order to not face punishment or consequences. And it's all about threats and fear. Do it or else, which is very much how I was raised. And I know a lot of us were raised with a kind of this punishment mentality of, because I said so, because I'm the adult and you are the child. And it really doesn't change the way we behave. It just changes the way that we behave when someone's watching us. Where when we have positive discipline, we're solving our problems. We're learning how to express our feelings appropriately. We're learning, when I feel this way, this is what my body needs, versus stop feeling that happens when it comes to punishment. And part of that is because of the way that our brain is working and forming. So a functioning adult brain has this thinking and emotion imbalance. We're operating most of the time from our prefrontal cortex, or that front of the brain, where we have logical thought, we have reasoning, we understand where we're at emotionally. And because of that, we're acting with these two things in balance. When we flip our switch, or when we lose our minds, we are no longer hanging out in the prefrontal cortex. We are now operating out of our brainstem or our reptilian brain, or we're operating out of our limbic system, which is all about emotion. So it's usually in one of the two, but rarely with both of them in balance when we kind of flip our lid or lose our mind or lose our something else, right? And so when it comes to children, they don't even have the capacity to be working in their frontal lobe. They don't have the capacity as a toddler to have emotions and thinking in balance. So that is where the adult has to kind of stay within themselves to keep these things in balance in order to support the emotional development of young children, which can get very challenging when you're stressed out, when there's a lot of stimuli going on, or when you didn't have a solid emotional foundation as a child. When feelings weren't something that you talked about. Instead, when you had feelings, you were yelled at, and the adult was saying, I'll give you something to cry about, or there's no crying in baseball, which are two very common phrases that I heard growing up. So then in order to have this balance of thinking and emotion, it can be very difficult. So our babies are operating strictly out of their brainstem. It's all about survival. I need to get my needs met. So I cry, you pick me up. I cry, you feed me. I cry, you put me to sleep. And they learn very quickly who they can rely on and who they can't rely on. They also learn ways to get their needs met. If I cry this way, you'll pick me up. But if I'm just fussing, you're not going to get me. So then around 1, their development of their limbic system begins to form, which is their emotional center. So they're starting to understand feelings. They're starting to process through these feelings, and they're starting to feel a lot of feelings. So no more am I just acting on basic instincts and basic survival techniques, but I'm really acting out of these developing emotions that I'm having. I really want a cookie, and all I can think about is me, 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 me. And so now I'm going to have this big giant tantrum on the floor because I just want a cookie. I just need to feel the feelings of just needing a cookie. Is that rational? No, but the rational part of their brain just isn't there yet. That part of the brain, that prefrontal cortex, does not begin forming until around age 3. But that's just the touch of development. There is a huge spike in development between the ages of 3 and 6 in the prefrontal cortex. So if you have school agers, you know that a lot of development happened between the ages of 3 and 6 when it comes to rational thought and being able to rationalize with a 4 or 5-year-old, where you can't rationalize with a 2-year-old. It's just not physically possible. Another big burst of development happens in the teenage years. And then full functioning happens usually in the early 20s. So there's a lot of time that it takes in order to develop that rational brain. And so because of that, we have to really understand where toddlers are coming from as far as their brain goes. So they are operating strictly out of their brainstem or their limbic system. We cannot then operate out of our brainstem and our limbic system. We really need to operate out of our thinking and emotional brain kind of in check, which is hard. So why do we guide versus punish? Outside of everything that I kind of talked about, it's because they're acting out for a reason. So all behavior is communicating a message, and it's really our job as a parent to decipher that message and to provide support based upon that message. And one time they bite, they might be communicating one message, and then the next time they bite, they might be communicating a different message. So it's really looking at each individual moment as what message are you trying to send me? How can I help better understand that message and then provide you support based on that message? Tantruming on the floor because I said no when you asked for a cookie, I understand that. It's clear as day why you are having behaviors. But there are other times that are not as obvious. I saw this a lot in the classroom when a child would go up to another child and bite them for no reason. And I use quotes to say for no reason, because again, there's always a reason, but that reason isn't as obvious. Oftentimes the message that they were trying to send was, hey, I want to play with you, but I don't have the skills to say, hi, I want to play with you. Or they want what you have because of toddler property laws. What's mine is mine. If it looks like mine is mine. If it once was mine, it's mine. If it's part of a set, all of it's mine. If it appears to be mine in any way, it can never be yours. And so usually the bite for no reason or hitting for no reason is to say, hey, I'm here, attention, I want to play with you, those sorts of things. Or because I am unable to share and I want what you have. So I'm going to use whatever skills I have in my back pocket to get what you have. And oftentimes hitting and biting work. So it solves their problem. So when we look at expectations, so let's look at our 1-year-olds, like what can I expect? So what is an appropriate behavior for a 1-year-old? What can I not get mad about because it is what 1-year-olds do? And then what guidance strategies truly work for this age group as we're helping them develop self-regulation skills. So our 1-year-olds are putting everything in their mouth because they explore through taste. So I either need to be okay with mouthing toys or mouthing objects, or I need to provide a safe alternative. So maybe it's not okay to put our TV remote in your mouth, but here is a teether instead, or here is your pacifier, or here is another toy that you can put in your mouth. And it's also setting up our space so that everything accessible to our 1-year-olds can go in their mouth. So it's creating a space that says yes instead of no. And then it requires less redirection, less guidance, because I've set up a space that's safe for you. They're wanting to feel and touch everything, again, because they're learning through their senses. So taking a 1-year-old out to the store and telling them not to touch is probably not a realistic expectation because they need to touch, they need to feel. And that continues with our 2-year-olds and really continues with our 3-year-olds as well. So out at a store, I might wear my 1-year-old on my back so that I'm taking away that need to touch and feel so that I am not getting frustrated by this and they are more successful. Or I might put them in the stroller with some toys so that I'm creating an environment that they can be successful. I'm also expecting 1-year-olds to hit and cry and bite in order to get their way or communicate with others because they lack communication verbally and they lack other ways to solve their problems. They're going to use what works, and that works. So I'm going to expect a toddler to bite. And then I can't get mad when the toddler bites because that is where they're at developmentally. Instead, I need to say, hey, you're missing a skill. What skill is that? And how do I give you that skill? And oftentimes it's communication, which develops over time. We also expect our 1-year-olds to give hugs, smiles, and then hit or bite to express their emotions because, again, they don't have verbal skills. My son used to bite me a lot when he was a toddler. Luckily, never bit in childcare, but always bit me. And it was because he would get really excited or to express positive emotions. So learning the word excited was one of his first emotion words because I recognize, like, we cannot keep biting mommy when you get excited. Let's work on this word so that you can use it instead of biting mommy. And then they may show a lot of anxiety, especially with change, transitions, with new people, with new situations, by doing a lot of withdrawing, crying, clinging, the desire to be held. So we meet that need by recognizing you're really anxious, so I'm going to pick you up and I'm going to hold you right now. Or I know that change is hard, so I'm going to help you with that transition by setting timers and giving you visuals and giving you time to transition because I know that that can be stressful. So as we look about guiding our 1-year-olds, it's really about redirection. So how do I just reshift your focus onto something more appropriate by using a calm voice, but also saying, stop or no, and then just kind of redirecting. There's no reason to have this long drawn out conversation about why that behavior is inappropriate because that rational part of the brain just isn't there yet. So there's no reason to kind of really go into depth about why you can't bite your friends. You just say, no, that hurts, and then you move them on to something else. We never use timeout because they just don't understand it. Their attention span is super short that by the time we sit them into timeout, they have no idea why they're sitting there, and they cannot make that connection between hitting you in the head with a block and sitting in timeout. So redirection is a lot more powerful than the use of timeout at this age. And then if the misbehavior is continuing to happen over and over, really evaluating the environment first. Is there something that I can remove or change about the environment that tells this behavior to stop happening? And then we want to use positive phrases stating our expectations. So using yes statements versus no statements. So saying, please sit down rather than don't stand up. So telling them what we want them to do rather than what we don't want them to do. And then use a lot of positive reinforcers. So praise, song, trinkets, toys, candy, whatever you need in order to create positive reinforcement. So while my daughter is not one of the things that we're working on is not interrupting me when I'm talking because she likes attention. And as soon as I start talking to anyone, it's mommy, 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 mommy. So first I would stop and I would say, mommy is talking. If you would like to talk to mommy, you can say, when you're done, can I talk next, please? So we first worked on that. And every time she would do it, I would praise her. Good job. Thank you for telling mommy that. Now I know that you want to have a turn to talk. Now all I do is put my finger up basically to say like 1 minute. And she will say, when you're done, can I have a turn? So she's already self-correcting when she sees that visual. And then I praise. I hear her. I say, I hear you. I hear you asking, can you have a turn when I'm done? Yes, when I am done, you can have a turn. And then I make sure that I wrap up my conversation, even if I have to come back to it, because the wait time has to be short. And then I acknowledge her and I allow her that opportunity to talk. Next, as she gets older, it will be her just putting her hand on me. So if you want to talk to me, then you need to put your hand on me, and that lets me know that you're there and you want to have a turn so that she's not verbally interrupting. So that is kind of the way that we phase out the interruption by using positive reinforcers. With our 2-year-olds, it's very similar to all of the behaviors that we were having previously, but then we have additional behaviors as well that we should be expecting. Our 2-year-olds are gaining language, and they're gaining independence. So they're saying things like no, mine, because they command a lot of attention and they're easy for them to say. So we want our toddlers to be independent. We want them to gain language, and we really want them to learn the words no and mine. It's the way that we respond that is most impactful when they say those words. They also have a lot of difficulty sharing because they don't understand that if I give this to you, you're going to give it back to me. So a lot of role playing when it comes to sharing, my turn, your turn, my turn, your turn, and a lot of song. So Daniel Tiger has an episode about sharing, and there's a song that says, first you'll have a turn and then I'll give it back. And so my daughter will even kind of sing that song as she's wanting to take turns with someone, so that it's kind of helping her brain recognize, like, first I'll have a turn and then I'll give it back, and kind of reassuring the other child, like, I promise I'll give it back to you when I'm done. Plus, toddlers, we should be expecting our 2-year-olds to have a lot of mood swings. They live in this glass case of emotion. They can go from happy to angry in the matter of seconds. And it is just because of that development of the limbic system. So that is normal. I should be expecting it. Doesn't mean it's any less frustrating, but it is part of being a 2-year-old. So guidance at this age is really about redirecting, but also modeling. That I am modeling turn taking, I am modeling sharing, I am modeling expressing my emotions appropriately, and letting them know that I make mistakes and I cry and I get upset, but this is how I deal with those feelings and emotions. You can begin to use time out with 2-year-olds on a very limited basis, usually with things that are going to hurt something or somebody. So if they hit someone, if they threw a toy, if they broke something, very limited basis, because they still might not yet make that connection. And then we want to redirect at least 2 times before having them kind of sit on our lap and gently talk about why that behavior is inappropriate, and setting a limit with them. And if an item becomes part of the problem, consider removing it temporarily until we can kind of regain control of our emotions before reintroducing that back into the environment. So now we'll look at some more ways of responding. So how we redirect and how we really focus on prevention first in order to promote appropriate behaviors. So the first is really shifting focus. So shifting focus from negative behaviors really to positive behaviors. So I'm going to draw a lot of attention to your positive behaviors. I'm going to make environmental changes to stop the behavior from ever happening in the first place. And I'm really going to embed social skills. So if climbing on the couch is a problem, then I'm going to provide another place for you to climb. If opening the cabinets and getting out all of my glass bowls is a problem, then I'm going to move my glass bowls into a high cabinet and I'm going to put things down low that you can get access to, or I'm going to lock the cabinet. So take away those things that are causing behavioral problems. That doesn't mean that the vacuum cleaner that they want to play with is causing disruption between, 2 of your children, and so you remove the vacuum and just say, oh, you guys can never play with this toy ever again. It's teaching them how to play with it by teaching social skills. The changes of the environment are creating a space that basically says, yes, you can explore, and I've removed everything that I don't want you to break or that's going to hurt you. And then again, front loading with lots and lots of positive attention. Additionally, it's really thinking about prevention from a standpoint of creating a workaround for challenging situations. So I know that getting dressed is going to be challenging. I'm not going to have a battle about getting dressed. I'm going to provide you choices and create some independence and control within getting dressed. So I'm going to lay out 2 different outfits and say, which one would you like to wear? I know getting dressed is challenging. So by giving you a choice, I've given you control over getting dressed, and toddlers need control, but they need control within a set of limits. So offering choices is really, really effective in preventing behaviors. Also planning ahead. I feel like most behaviors that happen with toddlers is because we're rushed. We're trying to get something, let's do. And the toddler's like, whoa, I want to do it by myself, or I want this, or I want that. And you're like, but we need to go now. So plan ahead and give transition warnings, giving yourself time to transition, but your child time to transition as well. So it gives them time to put their coat on by themselves, even though it might take 10 minutes, or it gives them time to buckle themselves into their car seat while you're tightening the straps. Using timers and picture schedules are also super effective in prevention because it gives them something to either listen for or to see, and letting them know that a transition is going to happen. And then providing really concrete cues and follow through. So it's setting the limits and following through with those limits. Providing that concrete clue. That example is kind of me putting my finger up to say you need to wait, or using the sign for stop, or putting a stop sign on your door if they're running out of the house or they're trying to open doors. That is really this concrete visual that says stop, you may not open this door. And then when you set a limit, make sure that you're following through. If you're saying you may not run into the street, then when they run into the street, then there's a consequence. You're showing me that your body cannot be safe. Now you're going to have to hold my hand. Another way of setting choices is, would you like to walk safely to the mailbox next to me, or would you like to hold my hand? It's basically telling them without saying it's not okay to just run freely in the street, but giving them a choice to say, either you can do it by yourself within the set of limits of standing next to me, or you're going to need to hold my hand. And typically when a toddler is given the choice between doing it themselves or having somebody help, they're going to do it themselves, which then ultimately gets you exactly what you were wanting in the end. And then we really want to respond with empathy by validating their feelings. So acknowledge their feelings, reassure them that difficult feelings are normal, and then let them know that they're loved and help them work through those feelings. So examples of this may be, I hear how sad you feel that you can't wear your dinosaur costume to preschool. Validating feelings doesn't mean that you're giving in. It means that you're telling them that, like, I know that stinks that you can't wear that costume to school. That's a bummer. Like, I feel you. But that validation isn't, well, sure, you can wear whatever you want. I mean, I personally don't care about wearing dinosaur costumes to school, but other parents might, or other teachers might. Or the dinosaur costume might be a problem when they're wearing it, and so we might need to set a limit there. Or, I know you don't want to put your pajamas on. It's hard to go from playtime to bedtime. Validating that, like, I know it's difficult to transition from play to bed, but it's time for bed. So validating those feelings and reassuring them that they're loved regardless of how they're feeling. While also setting clear limits. So you're allowed to set boundaries and your child's allowed to be upset about it. And I think that's important to know, that when you set limits and boundaries, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden your kid's like, okay, you set the limit, I'll totally do that. They're gonna protest. They're gonna be mad about it. They're going to fall down on the floor and have a tantrum. And then there's going to be days that they're going to say, okay, mommy, or okay, daddy. And they're going to be totally cool with it. And you're going to be like, who is this kid? And both are okay. But it's important that we're setting the boundary and staying consistent regardless of the response that we're getting back from our child. So sometimes I think it's also helpful when we're setting limits to use humor or imagination or a way of redirecting. So my daughter responds very well to song. So if we're having a really hard time and if I've told her no and she's protesting, that if I start singing it into a song, or doing something like that, that it helps kind of shift the focus. Or if she is refusing to come over to get dressed, I might say, hop on over, 1, 2, 3, hop, hop, hop like a bunny. And then that refocuses her using her imagination, and I'm pretending to be a bunny. And then I forget that I'm mad about putting my clothes on, and I'm going to be more willing to comply. Those things don't work as well with 4-year-olds as they do with a 1 or a 2-year-old. So sometimes it's really nice that 2-year-olds kind of go along with the flow that way a little bit more. And Celeste wrote in the chat box that Daniel Tiger songs are awesome. And you are 100% correct about that. Daniel Tiger is your problem solver to most of your toddler problems. He has the answers. He helped potty train my children. He helps them when they feel so mad that they want to roar. He helps with sharing, like he saves the day. He helped that transition back to childcare after COVID quarantine with songs about moms and dads come back. So at least someone else here is like, Daniel Tiger. So I totally agree. And then we want to make sure that we're enforcing the limit regardless of if our child is throwing a tantrum, and that we aren't giving in. Because if the tantrum comes from wanting a cookie, and at the end of the tantrum we give the cookie, then we have just told our child, if you throw a big old fit, you're going to get whatever you want. And then that just creates this cycle of throwing tantrums in order to meet my needs. So it's important that we're not giving in at the end of the tantrum. And pick your battles. Sometimes it's just really not that deep. Sometimes it's just not that deep. You wear that dinosaur costume to school. Like, I don't care. Your teachers can deal with it. Sorry, teachers on the call. But sometimes it's just not that important. So the easiest way to avoid unnecessary battle is to really take a few seconds and ask yourself, is this a limit that I really need to be setting right now? If it's hurting themselves or hurting someone else or hurting, an object, then it's probably a limit that I need to set. If it's not hurting anything, is it just because it's annoying? Is it just because I am short fused right now because I'm stressed and that's why I'm setting this limit? Is it really that deep? Do I care that you're not going to wear a coat outside? No, because you're not going to get a cold. You're not going to die from going outside without a coat on. What's going to happen is you're going to realize that, okay, mom, dad, teacher, they might actually know what they're talking about. Next time I'm going to wear a coat. I'm cold. Can I put my coat on? Sure. So sometimes it's just not that serious. And it's something that I'm working on even with my 7-year-old. He never wants to wear a coat. And I have to keep telling myself at some point he's going to get cold and want to wear a coat. And until he can see that himself, he's not going to want one. And it is what it is. So now let's kind of look at specific behaviors, which may answer some of those questions that you have right now. So diving deeper kind of into reframing the way that we think about behaviors. So on the surface, you're trying to get your child to look you in the eye, probably after they've done something wrong and they won't. That's really telling you, I'm embarrassed. It's not them refusing to do the behavior that you've asked them to do. It is really them just saying, I'm embarrassed and I don't want to look at you in the eyes because I know I did something wrong. Another behavior that might annoy us, it's really not that deep, is this hoarding of stuffed animals or things. So they're wanting to take 50 stuffed animals to bed with him. Or my kids the other night when it was time to go out to dinner, both packed giant bags full of toys like they were moving into the restaurant. And I was like, it's not that deep, it's not that deep. So it was comfort. I'm either scared or I need some sort of comfort. And if that's what you need, you do you. I tell toddlers all the time, you do you. If that's what you need, you do you. If you want to dip your cheese stick in your milk, you do you. Beginning to tantrum, hitting, or screaming is really sending this message that I'm feeling really out of sorts. So as I think about this behavior as an adult, I'm looking at a child who's telling me I'm really out of sorts and I need you to help me, versus looking at a child who's screaming and throwing a fit, which allows me to behave by responding appropriately from that thinking and emotion brain kind of in balance rather than acting from my brainstem. This child throwing a fit while you're making their snack is just saying, I'm really hungry right now. So can you give me a bite while you're cutting up the rest of my strawberries? Can you feed me a little bit quicker? Or just saying you're really hungry. Mommy is trying the best I can. I will have it ready as soon as I can. I know you're really hungry. Something I tell my daughter all the time is you cannot grab off the counter. That is not a safe choice. There might be things up here that could hurt you, or you might spill all of your food. If you wait 1 minute, your dinner will be ready and then you can eat. But the more that you keep trying to grab, the longer it's going to take me to make the rest of your dinner. So trying to help them make that connection between waiting and then actually getting what they want or need at the end. And then lastly, the yelling, "No, my mommy," around other kids is really sending this message of paying more attention to me. Like, I'm here, pay attention to me. You are mine, you are not theirs. And it's that common 2-year-old fight of my mommy, no, my mommy, my mommy, no, my mommy. And it's what all 2-year-olds go through. And it's just saying, like, I want the focus to be on me. Additionally, when our kids start engaging in behaviors like screaming, they're really doing so, because of this cause and effect. I am going to scream and then I want to observe your response and see what happens. They're also experimenting with their vocal cords because it's a new skill. I just learned that I can scream. Me as an adult, I've been screaming for years. So like, it's not cool anymore to scream. When you're 1 or 2, it's cool to scream. And it also commands a lot of attention. So the more we focus on screaming, the worse it actually gets. So this is one of those skills that we either redirect or we completely ignore, because the more we focus on it, the more it's going to happen. So doing things like vocal experimentation, let's practice our whisper screams. And then let's stick our head out of the door and practice our loud screams. Practicing singing loud and quiet games. All of those things are going to allow for vocal experimentation that doesn't fuel this need to scream. When screaming happens in situations like in the car, it can be very easy as the adult to turn around and be like, I'm going to pull this car over if you don't stop screaming, and get very angry because you're in a closed space. You can't escape. There's really nothing you can do. So at that point, I think it's most beneficial to either ignore it or to simply state, I can't hear you when your words, I can't hear your words when you scream. Please say it again in a talking voice so I can understand you. AKA, I'm not going to give you any attention for that voice. If you talk in a regular voice, I would be glad to help you. But I have no idea what you're saying when you talk in a screaming voice. With hitting, kicking, and biting, again, it's about cause and effect. I find that I bite you and then you scream and I like that. Or you cry and I like that. Or I bite you or kick you or hit you and then you give me the toy that I wanted at the end. Like, yay, I got what I wanted. Teething can also fuel this. And young children are teething for a really long time, and it becomes normal for them to experience teething pains. So a toddler can't tell you my mouth hurts because their mouth has hurt since they were about 6 months old as they've been navigating teething. So they're not able to communicate that to you, but you can notice by them chewing on something on the side of their mouth, by biting a lot, that is letting you know, I need something else to chew on. They also might be hitting, kicking, or biting because of a lack of language or social skills, and then immature play skills, not understanding how to play with somebody else because sharing isn't something that comes naturally to them at this stage, or they don't know how to enter play. So we respond by setting limits that basically send a message that we don't hurt other people. No bite that hurts, or people are not for hurting. So that is kind of a limit that I'm setting, is we do not hurt other people. If you want to kick the wall, go for it. You're going to realize that it hurts your foot and you're going to stop, but we do not hurt other people. And then we want to remove them out of the situation temporarily. And that may be just kind of moving their focus or moving them completely out of the room. And then we want to provide them the words that may be missing in that moment. So if you're taking something because you want it, then say, you want the toy. Say, my turn. And you might even do this. So a 1-year-old might just pat themselves on the chest or say, me. And you kind of respond back and validate. You said me. That means my turn. I want to play. Can I have a turn next? So that you're giving them those missing social and language skills that they're lacking. And the more that they hear them, the more they're going to develop that appropriate language to then use once they have the ability to use it. Encourage them to use words like hi or can I play too to enter play, practicing my turn, your turn, and then keeping a lot of sensory materials available, allowing them to mouth things, and consider delaying the removal of a pacifier until after the 2-year-old molars come through. I find it to be most beneficial with my own kids and with kiddos that I've taught, that allowing them to keep their passing until their 2-year-old molars have cut through before we transition away has been the most beneficial for their emotional development. Temper tantrums is one of those behaviors that we've talked a lot about already, but it really comes down to the fact that I'm just feeling all the feels. I'm living in my limbic system. I lack a lot of language, and I'm basically just telling you, like, I'm mad or I don't like what's happening right now. I'm expressing my displeasure for this situation. So as an adult, it's really important that we're remaining calm, that we are not then acting out of frustration. We're getting down on their level, we're making eye contact and responding in a very reassuring way by saying things like, I know you're sad. Would you like a hug? Would you like a hug is the magic phrase for my son. It is not the magic phrase for my daughter. That she does not like that. She does not want me to touch her. She wants to live in the feels. So for her, the magic phrase for her would be, I know you're sad. It's okay to be sad. You get all your sads out and you let me know when they're all out of your body, because she just needs to get them out and she wants to live in those feelings, where my son doesn't. He doesn't want to be in those feelings. He doesn't like it. He wants to avoid and escape. And so by saying, would you like a hug, allows him that opportunity to get out of those feelings and to feel better. You may need to move your child to a safe place to give them a safe spot to kind of tantrum and to get those feelings out. And then again, sticking to that limit that was previously set to the tantrum. And then when it comes to defiance and saying no, this is all because of their increasing independence and their limited language. They hear it a lot, it draws a lot of attention, as well as they want to have power. So I hear a lot of times, like, you don't tell me no. Like, I am the adult, you're the child, you don't tell me no. Where that really doesn't validate the feeling that I'm really mad that I don't want to put my pajamas on, and it doesn't help them problem solve their emotions. So instead, we respond with saying things like, I hear you saying no. It's hard to stop playing and take a bath, but it's time. So that but it's time says the limit has been set, and the limit has been set. And then we follow through. Sometimes we need to redirect because that follow through isn't working. So maybe it's, let's go jump up the stairs until we can get to the bath. Or do you want to make your bath blue tonight? Or we redirect with something that focuses their attention away from stopping to whatever is coming next, using a lot of first then statements. First, we're going to do this, then we're going to do that. And redirect, redirect, redirect. So again, telling yourself, is this a limit I really need to set? Is this a boundary I need to set, or is this something that I can just let it go? And then as we're thinking about kind of a review of managing behaviors, it's about providing physical distance or providing physical guidance, sometimes physical distance. I'm in COVID mind. So I'm getting down on their level and I'm really talking face to face with them, praising good behavior, removing them from situations, and then ignoring those mild behaviors that just aren't that deep. So that is kind of the way that we respond to toddler behaviors, kind of in a nutshell. So now that we kind of have these tools to say, okay, maybe this behavior is coming from a place that I now understand, now I can respond more appropriately to this behavior. So Marcy says, my 3-year-old throws anything he can grab when he is mad or frustrated. Yep. His speech is delayed, so a typical speech for 3-year-old isn't available to him. It clearly adds to his frustration, which we understand. Suggestions on how to handle it happens all the time. Yes, so usually when they're acting out of frustration, they're just going to start grabbing and throwing, or they're going to start grabbing and biting. My daughter would get so mad that she would bite the carpet. Like, like why? So it's giving him other tools. So maybe creating a bucket of soft things that he can throw when he gets frustrated, and setting the limit, like a block is not okay for you to throw, but here is the basket of balls that you can throw. Or here is a pillow that you can squeeze, or a pillow to hit. So it's validating the feeling of frustration and anger, and then also giving him an appropriate outlet, while also helping kind of build that speech. This speech development is going to happen probably after the frustration has passed. So I've calmed down, I'm not as mad. Now I go back to him and say, you were really mad. Next time, tell mommy I'm mad, or tell mommy like that's mine, or whatever that language piece is that you can give him, or even giving him the signs to use alongside of the words can help him feel kind of more in power of using his own skills in order to communicate. So thank you guys, and I'll see you guys on the next webinar.